Okay, we're recording. Hello, everyone. This is Craig Kim. I'm still, as I continue on with the Gold Star families. Today, I have the family of Danny Dietz. I'd like for you guys to introduce yourselves. We'll start with you, sir.
Well, my name is Dietz-Marsh, and I'm Danny's stepfather. I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but I know him very well through being married to his mother for almost 10 years now. So, and this is Cindy.
I'm Cindy. I'm Danny's mother. Danny is the oldest of 3 of my children.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. Really appreciate you guys being able to sit down with me and we're able to make this happen to really chat about this. It was crazy how this all started, with the fact that I just had posted some other videos from other Gold Star family conversations I've had, and here comes along Fred Tapia telling me to, hey, reach out to Cindy, he sends me, and I said, Cindy who? And he said, Cindy Dietz. And of course, I didn't know the whole story. I didn't know who. I was like, well, it can't be Danny. It can't be Danny. And sure enough, and so again, I stumble over my words because I really, like, you don't know how much this really means to me. It means a lot to me altogether. And I think Don had mentioned earlier too that this is the first time, I guess. I know you guys have gone through many of conversations and interviews about Danny all in all, but this is, I think, one of the first ones for the year I think you guys have done. So
yeah. We've been pretty busy relocating from Texas down here, and you and I talked earlier, and you said you moved back here in June, and we also moved here in June of this year. But we're both from this area. In fact, from this pretty much close to this area that we're sitting at right now. So, but we've been away for almost 6 years, and we decided it was time to come back and be with the grandkids, and we just missed the mountains of Colorado.
Can't beat them. That's why I came back myself too. So, so kind of just going into Danny, man. I guess just if you would start from the beginning. Danny as a baby. I mean, what was that like?
So Danny was born on January 26th of 1980, and he was born at Aurora Presbyterian Hospital. I believe the name has changed, but the hospital's still there. Came into this world on a snowstorm. We had to drive in a snowstorm for the delivery, and his father, Dan Sr., was actually going to school to become a medical assistant. And he was at school at the time when I went into labor with Danny, and so he had to meet us at the hospital. Danny was a very rambunctious, busy, from when he was first born. He was hard to put to sleep and just a terror coming into this world.
So he was a night owl, I take it.
He was a night owl. He was a day owl. He just, all of the above.
It's like on caffeine almost. That's like 24/7 sounds like. Wow.
But he was, and as he grew up, he had quite a personality, very inquisitive, very intelligent. I didn't realize it at the time because I was a baby having a baby. I was only 18 years old, almost 19 when I had Danny. And he was just so intelligent. And, I just realized, I just thought I just had a normal child. It wasn't until he started school, when they started testing him, he tested 2 points above genius level. And so he was always in the gifted and talented um, classes during school. Uh, then as he grew older and his sister was born, wasn't quite sure he wanted another sibling, and he was kind of ornery with her right at first, tried to throw her out of the bassinet when she was first born. And but then later they became very, very close. They were almost like twins growing up. They were just so close.
What was the age
Autobot.
difference? Sorry, what was the
Uh,
age difference between the two?
So it's 2.5 years between Tiffany and Danny. And then Eric came in 3.5 years later after Tiffany. So there was quite an age difference between Eric and between Danny and his younger brother. So Tiffany and Danny grew up together. They spent a lot of time and, went to school together, played together.
So what, I guess, can you think of a time when both Tiffany and Danny like kind of got into some like mischievous activities, or like anything that you would say is more like a fun time or whatnot?
Oh no. So, well, I'm gonna tell you another story. One of the stories of so him and Tiffany would just sit there and think of things to do, and they were kind of bored one day, and we had one of those old time heaters, furnaces that kind of
Yeah.
lit up. They knew not to go near it because it got hot. Well, they had this, the beaded necklaces that you get dog tags on.
Yeah.
May have been their dad's beaded chain, and they started heating that up. They had it on a stick, and they were heating it up on the heater. And Eric was this happy-go-lucky little toddler and just always happy. I mean, just never cried. He was always just so happy. And they kind of looked at each other, and I found out this is how this happened later when they told me about it. But Eric came skipping around the corner, and I think they meant to just scare him. They threw it at him,
Oh my
but
God.
it actually wrapped around his neck. Left little dots, and I guess he went screaming through the house. And when they finally caught him and got the chain off from his neck, of course he had little dots around his neck. And so that was one of the things. They used to always, Eric was always their guinea pig on things. They liked to go down the stairs in blankets, and they'd slide down and find different ways to slide down the stairs. And of course, Eric was the one that they'd try first. And then if it looked like it didn't hurt, then they would go down and do it. Well, they decided to put him in a big hamper, try to slide him down in the big hamper. Well, of course, that didn't work. He tumbled all the way down and crying. And yeah, they were both kind of ornery when it came to their little brother.
So at what point did they start like accepting their little brother Eric?
I think, I mean, they loved him. They loved their little brother. They just, he was always the baby to them, though. He was so young, so much younger than DJ, and Tiff used to make him play school with her. But I think they protected him, even though they picked on him, but they protected him. So
they kind of, did Danny, I take it with Danny being the older one, he protected pretty much both of his siblings, right? Both Tiffany.
He was very protective of both his siblings. There was one time DJ and Tiffany, I think DJ was about 9 years old and Tiffany was 7, about 7. And they went to the park, and it was a kind of a cold day, and the lake at the park had iced over. And so they were out there playing on the ice, and Tiffany fell through. And of course, DJ jumped in, pulled her out, saved her, put his coat around her, and brought her home. So he was pretty protective at a young age, and uh,
That is awesome. That's great to hear. So so what was, so obviously you were talking, around the 9, 10-year-old time frame, you kind of move forward into more of the middle school years. He's becoming a teenager now at this point. I mean, what is, I'm a, I know how I was when I was a teenager, but I mean, I don't, Danny, was it more
so
like, hey, what was it like, I guess, as Danny and Tiffy, and of course, and with Eric as well, as they were growing up and that.
so Danny had always been in the gifted and talented, and once he started middle school, he decided he didn't want to be that nerdy, geeky image anymore. And he decided to take on the bad boy image and wanted to wear baggy pants and sagging pants, and he wanted to be a skater. And he actually was very good at skateboarding, very artistic as well. That's when he started growing horns. I mean, he just didn't want rules, I mean, he just wanted to be a bad boy, and hung around kids that were not the greatest kids. A couple of his best friends were, come from single family homes, and they didn't have a lot of parental guidance at that time. And so he thought he wanted to have the less parental guidance as well. And of course, we didn't fly very well with us. And I don't know, I guess he started running away. He ran away for the first time when he was about 14 years old. And of course, I went and got him, brought him back home. And he was just hanging around kids. They liked to paint people's walls that didn't want their walls painted. I mean, it wasn't so much graffiti. I mean, he did that as well, but his were more like portraits. But that was his thing. He got into painting walls, and so we tried to get him, get his focus changed, and we bought him an airbrush and got a bunch of big giant cardboard, and wanted him to practice doing that in the garage. But he did it for a while and got him drawing books and stuff like that, but just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
He was in the all my kids were in the martial arts. I have a black belt in Shotokan and a brown belt in Taekwondo, and his father has a black belt in Taekwondo. And so we trained all three of the kids, Danny starting at 2. And they got into tournaments, and, he did tournaments, and he competed for a while, him and his sister, and Eric when he was just a toddler. But it still just wasn't enough for him. He just was bored. He was bored with school, he wasn't challenged enough, since he wasn't in the gifted and talented anymore. Regular school was really boring for him. He was very bored. And when he got into high school age, then he really, really changed. I think he was about 16 when he first went and visited the military branch and was checking out the different branches. And I think it was back then, about 17, when he actually signed the papers. But he needed us to come in with him, and he hadn't told us anything yet. And then we found out when he was 18 that he wanted to go in, but he was still kind of screwing around with school and not really going, and ditching school. And so I had to kind of get him back in focus again. And there was a time where the courts got involved because he wasn't going to school. And, you know, Dan and I just went before the judge and we told him, you know, we don't know what to do with him. We take him in one door, he goes out the back. We've tried everything. I went, sat with him in class, and, you know, it's just was a fight all the time. And so the judge, at that point in time, they had a boot camp out in Pueblo. And so the judge talked us into getting him into that. But in order to get him into that, we had to sign custody over to the states just for him to be able to go to the boot camp. And then, of course, the courts would step back in and give us custody after he finished the boot camp. And we agreed to do that. That was the most horrible day of my life when they came to our door and social services took Danny, and he had to go into foster care for 2 days before he went to this boot camp. And it was pretty bad. It was hard on his father and I, and for a long time he held a grudge against us for that. It wasn't until he graduated the teams that he came back and he apologized and realized, you know, why we did what we did. And after he got out of the boot camp, well, then that's when he straightened up, and he literally did 4 years of high school in 1 year. He had some credits, but he had to do correspondence courses and take a full schedule for the full year. And he graduated a year late. He graduated at the age of 19. And then right after he graduated, then 2 months later in August, he went to Navy boot camp.
So when he was growing up, and you were talking I'm sorry, I'm going backwards a little bit, but when he actually was growing up and he was, you know, painting walls and things of that nature, I mean, was he, did he ever get in trouble with the law or anything like that? Or did he, you know, have to do community service or anything like that? Or was it just?
He did have to do community service, but it was mainly, he got in trouble because he painted people's walls that didn't want painting. And at that point in time, they were seeking out all these graffiti kids and affiliating them with gangs. And at that point in time, they affiliated him with a gang, but he was not at all with a gang. He just was painting people's walls that didn't want their walls painted. So he had to do community service for that. He did serve a couple of days in a juvenile facility.
To kind of moving forward to back to I guess the day. I mean, when was it social services, or if they picked him up? And I mean, what if you can tell me about that day, regarding, like, you know, when he was taken away? I mean, was he shocked or surprised, or was it just like he knew this was going to happen?
Oh, no, he didn't know it was going to happen at all. He was very upset and crying, and, you know, and telling us, please don't do this. Don't let them take me. And it was just, I mean, it was the hardest thing for his dad and I to do. But we really believed that was the only thing that was going to get him off the dark road he was heading down and get him back on track again. And we were willing to do anything to get him on a good road and back on track and being the good son that we raised him to be, and to do something, make something of himself.
Typically, you know, it's crazy you mentioned that, because it's, you know, like, I kind of myself the same way. You know, I had to go down that track as well, felony charges, all that stuff with me, and then eventually you end up becoming, it's crazy how, you know, it's a matter of how how you take a situation like that, as far as what you were before as a horrible kid, you know, in my case, and then kind of just moving into, you know, going to some type of rehab program, and then eventually coming out, you're you're a straight person, and then in Danny's case, joining the Navy. So kind of just moving forward, he graduated. You're saying so he graduated in '99. It sounds like, and then.
And then he graduated in June of '99, and then went into Navy boot camp right away, and graduated Navy boot camp in August of 1999.
So how did he break the news to you guys as far as joining the Navy, and why the Navy?
He told his dad, and he actually chose the Navy because his when he signed up, his intentions were because he did so well on the ASVAB test, or whatever it is.
Yeah, the ASVAB.
Yeah, he did so well on that, and the physical fitness tests. He was one of very few that got chosen to go straight from Navy boot camp to BUD/S. And so his intentions were to become a SEAL. He wanted to, that is what his goal was. And he flew through Navy boot camp, flying colors, and then went into the BUD/S training right away.
So when he decided he was going to become a SEAL, what was your, did you know about the SEALs then, or did you hear about them, or what were you thinking?
You know, his father knew about the UDT because his father served during the Vietnam era, and he was a corpsman during Vietnam. He never served in Vietnam, but he was a corpsman and took care of the veterans coming back. I lost my train of thought.
Fine.
So his father knew what he was getting himself into, and he actually didn't. You know, he told DJ that he would never make it because he was so stubborn and you know, not willing to. He didn't want to listen to home rules, let alone, you know, military rules and guidelines. But I didn't know much about the branches, and I didn't know much about the SEALs, and up until the day he was killed, I didn't know really what he was doing. All I knew is I was proud. I was proud that he followed his dreams. He became one of the best, and I was just proud of him.
That's a big accomplishment altogether, because there's only so very few people who make it through to become a true Navy SEAL, and it's a lot of respect for them as well. Man, it's crazy to hear. And then
and he holds the record on the O course still too. He did it in 4 minutes and 59 seconds, I believe. I'd have to check it for sure, but they gave us a plaque. And as far as I know, I mean, I'm sure probably somebody's beat it by now, but normally they do the O course in 15 minutes. That's a normal. So for him to do it in less than 5 minutes, and he did it with a broken ankle.
That is crazy.
He was determined to excel, and he did. He really did.
Yeah.
He was one of few Navy SEALs that did a lot of. I mean, he became a sniper qualified. In the end, because they needed communications officers, he became a communications officer. But he took lots of schooling. He did lots of different schooling, a lot more than a lot of the officers. You know, we found out that he had more schooling than a lot of the officers. So
obviously, kind of just going past basic, fast past the school and then becoming a SEAL? I mean, assuming graduation, I guess, what was your feelings of towards him? I mean, after he was ready to push on to the first duty station, I mean, or graduating, I guess you could say.
So we all, I mean, all of us went, you know, his father, I, Tiffany and Eric and my mother, we all made a vacation of it and went out there to his bud's graduation in San Diego. And we stayed a whole week out there with him, and we were just in heaven. It was the first really trip other than going to Kansas to visit family. It was a first vacation trip that we ever took as a family to a beautiful, beautiful state like that, and being able to go and you know, see where Danny did his training, where he slept at night, and just everything. It was just so phenomenal. It was so exciting. We were so proud. Everybody was just so proud.
That's awesome. Wow. So then, you know, he gets to he's at his first duty station. I mean, when does he get the call as far as when he's moving out? Does he contact you guys?
So he came home for a little bit shortly after he graduated BUD/S and got his Trident. And then he was assigned to SDV Team 2, SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2, out in Norfolk, Virginia. And he, this Operation Red Wing was actually his third deployment overseas. That was his last deployment that he did. He had over a dozen missions, and that was his third deployment. He never called us the prior ones. Usually, he never called us the prior two, or you know, the other smaller missions that he went on. It wasn't until this last mission he called us before he was leaving, and he must have called a dozen times because he wanted to make sure he talked to his sister and his brother. And of course they were in school. Tiffany was high school, Eric was middle school, and you know, they're busy with their friends and stuff, and so it was hard to get them connected together via telephone. And he finally got through and talked to everybody. And you know, at that time I didn't think it was strange or anything. It never scared me or anything. But looking back now, it was almost like he was telling us he wasn't going to come back. And I didn't see it that way. I just was so proud that he called us. I mean, it was exciting to get a phone call. So normally it was just nothing. You know, he'd come back and say, well, I'm back home. Every once in a while I think he reached out to Tiffany a lot and told her when he was leaving, the prior ones, but not us. He didn't want to worry us, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like he didn't want to do that, or it could be the fact that maybe they just didn't really want to say much as far as where he was going, and like he couldn't say. You know, I mean, that's always.
And he kept that pretty private. I mean, even when we'd go and visit him out there in Norfolk, you know, he'd take us to go see his compound late at night, and he never took us around his friends or anything, his teammates. It was always just family time. It wasn't. Yeah. He didn't want us. I don't know if he was embarrassed of us or he just didn't want to take us around his friends because he wanted to shelter us from that.
So, where's I going to go with this? I'm sorry. I had a brain fart there for a minute. So I guess, so with him being in the Navy, and of course, you know, Tiffany and Eric. I mean, what what was their feel? I mean, what were they like, I guess, with him being not at home, I guess, anymore? The fact that he's deployed, or he's at, at his own, doing his own thing.
I think I think they were both so busy, with high school and middle school, that they're busy with their friends, that, of course, they miss their brother.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think they all realize that, there's going to come a time when they grow up and they're going to leave the house. And he was only a phone call away to Tiffany, and, she talked to him a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So the last mission he's on, Operation Red Wing, where, I guess, from your standpoint, as far as what what is it that you can recall as far as the timeline is, knowing up until the point?
So on June 28th is when we got our first knock. And a guy by the name of Lieutenant Schaffner, who we're still very close with, came to our door with a female and another male. I don't remember their names. And I think Tiffany and I, well, let me go back a little bit. So earlier that day, Tiffany and I were out shopping, and we got a phone call from Patsy, his widow, and telling us that a helicopter had been shot down. And I remember telling her, I just didn't feel DJ was on that helicopter. I just knew he was not. But you can tell she was worried, because she knew he was out there. We knew he was out there, but I just didn't have a feeling that anything was wrong at the time. And anyway, Dan called us, my ex-husband, the kids' father. He called us to tell us that we needed to get home. And so he was watching the news, and about the time we pulled up, Dan was standing outside, and he rushed us in, and I think he was just looking for something. And pretty soon he kept looking out the window, and I can see that something was bothering Dan. And he saw the blue van pull up, and he saw 3 uniformed officers get out of the van, and his heart sank. And I remember him just being so upset, and I just kept saying, it's okay. I said, he's okay. I said, he's going to be okay. I didn't know what at that time to think. And when they told us, that initial knock was he was missing in action. And so we were just kind of a wreck by then. And we told him we needed to go to Virginia Beach and be there with my son's wife, Patsy. And we needed to be there to await his homecoming. And we got on a flight on June 29th. And we were in Virginia Beach on June 29th. And I remember the different officers coming in to see us and, not giving us any news other than he's still missing in action. And we waited. They wouldn't let us watch the news. People kept bringing food, and, we were just in shock, I think. And I just kept thinking, praying and thinking, my son's going to be okay. They're going to find him, and he's going to come home. And we're going to be here to welcome him home. And then July 4th is when we got our final knock. We're notified that he wasn't coming, that he had been killed in action.
So,
Then,
Still
no,
in Virginia
we were
Beach.
still in Virginia. And then we found out a little bit more about what had happened. And we found out that there was one survivor. And of course, we didn't know the name of the survivor or anything. And it wasn't until the service they had out there on July 5th in Virginia Beach for the 8 Navy SEALs on the helicopter. Of course, there was 8 Army Night Stalkers. They had their own services.
right.
And we had the service for the big service for the 8 Navy SEALs that were on the helicopter and the 3 on the ground. And it was that day that we were told that Marcus was the survivor. I knew nothing about Marcus. I know it. Anyways, he was a survivor.
July 4th.
That was July 5th that we found out who the survivor was. And it was just, I remember it just being a blur. I mean, I was in shock. We left, we had the services there, and then we flew home, I believe the 6th or the 7th, I don't remember, the 6th. And then we were going to have the final services here in Colorado. And I pulled myself together enough to be able to help plan his service here. So we got the church services and the funeral home that they would be flying him into. And of course, when they flew him into the funeral home, his buddy, his teammates stayed there and stood watch with him. Not at the funeral home, and it wasn't until the next day when we had the service, and they stood watch with Danny the whole time until our services were over, and then we went to Fort Logan, and we had a gal by the name of starts with an L, Lorraine, and she owned a horse-drawn carriage company, a horse-drawn carriage, and she got in touch with us, and we did the horse-drawn caisson with Danny, and I rode on the carriage with her, and everybody else walked behind. It was Patsy and Brad Geary was one of my son's teammates, and then my daughter and son and Dan Dietz, they all walked behind, and then more family members and all his teammates that had come out. And we had a couple cars, one for my mother, and we did we had the service. We had the service at where our pastor did a short sermon, and then we followed him to the grave site, and we saw Danny getting lowered into we were one of not very many that they allow, but they allowed us to watch as they put Danny into the ground, and we got to put the flowers. Each of us got to throw put a rose down on the casket, and then they lowered it in, and I think that was the beginning of 4 years of total. The first 4 years was just total craziness. I think I was crazy for 4 years.
So, so when you learned of I don't know if this is before or even, I'm assuming this is before the movie, you know, you've learned of what heroic actions that Danny was doing, Danny and Axe and Murphy. I mean, what was going through your mind?
I think I was in a state of shock. His dad probably listened and sunk. It's more of it sunk in. I never really read. I didn't want to read the after action report. I didn't want to see the pictures. I didn't want to read his autopsy report. I didn't want to know any of it. But his father did, and he. It was about a week or two after we buried our son that President Bush came out to see us. And I remember Dan asking both of us, he asked if there was anything we wanted or needed. And I remember Dan telling me to tell him that we want to know the truth of what happened to our son. That's all we want. We just want to know the truth. Because there were so many different reports and, you know, so many different interviews that, you know, with the survivor, that not everything matched up. And so we just wanted to know the truth. And so they got us the actual after action report, and we knew what really happened. And we just, tried to figure out how to carry on without one of our children.
So, that's a lot. It's a lot to take in altogether. I remember watching I saw a YouTube video. This is back in 2005-ish or so that you had mentioned about the report, and I think it was like a news journal, a news media person that was talking to your ex, and had identified, like, you know, had like kind of just read off the report to the guy, you know, to this news media guy, as far as like where, basically, you know, just basically saying, bottom line, my son was a hero. My son is a flipping hero. I mean,
yeah, Danny had 21 wounds all to the front, which, you know, would tell you he fought. And Axelson had 22 wounds all to the front. Murphy had 19 wounds, I believe, and one was to the back. And so they were all heroes. I mean, they all fought, and yeah, there's so much more I could say, but I just can't.
I understand.
There's a lot that I can't share.
It's fine. So the memorial, obviously, the memorial happens, and then of course, you know, just kind of fast forward a little bit too. You hear about this movie, and all. I mean, may I ask, what was your thought about it?
I didn't want a movie. I didn't want a book. I didn't want a movie, but I think the story needed to be told. It was very Hollywoodized, so I was disappointed that such an amazing story had to be so Hollywoodized. It could have stuck true to the story and been an amazing story. But, you know, I think the world needed to know what our veterans our military men and women are doing, you know, what the sacrifices they're making, not only away from their families, but, you know, out on the battlefields. Yeah. So I think the story needed to be told in that sense. We were treated very respectfully by Peter Berg. He came out to see us and, you know, got our permission to, you know, he wanted all the family's permission to move forward with this. I don't believe he would have if any of us would have said no. But we all gave him the approval, and you know, he let us be a part of it as much as possible as we could. From the moment we met who was going to portray our son, I mean, you know, it was series of interviews and meeting with Emil, and, you know, telling him all about Danny, his personality, and what we felt he had to get right in the movie. And Emil did a good job. So in that sense, everything, it was all respectful. And I think being that first movie, you know, that movie, it really brought a lot of honor to all our sons. And, you know, I feel like even though sometimes the way they portrayed him in the movie, people would come and he was the one that stood out the most to them in the movie. And that was a good feeling. That was good to hear people, you know, tell me that, you know, what I didn't already know. I mean, I already knew my son was a hero and a warrior. But to hear them tell us, it meant a lot. And it meant a lot to know that, you know, he's never going to be forgotten. And it's a part of history now that people will talk about forever, for years to come.
So what I was telling Don earlier too is, you know, I joined I was part of the Mile High Honor Guard for a little bit, Honor Guard, first time ever for the Air Force, down at Buckley Air Force Base. And and one of the crazy things behind that is the fact that I was, you know, part of doing this. You know, there's a gentleman he's now, I think he's a senior, no, I think he's a master sergeant, Wolf Stump, who's pretty much the lead NCOIC guy for the Mile High Honor Guard, and every group of individuals who actually was part of the Honor Guard, he brought out to, we would always go to Fort Logan, right? But he would take us around, but the very first headstone we would always go to is your son's. And Sergeant Stump knew the entire history, knew about him. And of course, you know, this is back in 2000 and like 2015 time frame, and just to hear about him, I was in amazement then. I'm in more of amazement now. I'm surprised. I'm shocked that I'm sitting in front of you talking to you about your son. I'm honored by that altogether, and just to be here. So, so when talking to, you know, Mike Murphy's parents, or even to Axe's parents, are you still in communication with them as well?
Yeah, I'm very, very close with Maureen and Dan, Donna and Corky, and I'm also very close to Natalie Healy.
Yeah.
Dan Healy's mother, and Eric Christensen's mother, and a lot of the parents. Mostly those are the ones I mostly am in contact with, but when I do speak a lot to the others. Very close with Rosemary. She's Marcus Morales's mother. Very, very close with her. He was one of the Army Night Stalkers on the helicopter. Um, and the Navy SEAL Foundation has been phenomenal in keeping the families together. They host a parents retreat every year, and all of us parents get together. And it means so much to me. It's so important. Don's been with me, for the past 10 years now. Gone with me to the parents retreats, and we get together because nobody knows our pain. People can empathize and sympathize with us, but unless you're a gold star parent and know our pain, we could get together and we're all walking the same walk. We're on the same journey now. And so the Navy SEAL Foundation has been phenomenal as far as that goes.
That is amazing. Yeah, I think you couldn't say it any better. You're right. Nobody knows your walk, unless Gold Star Families is something I can sympathize for and support. But as far as being in the actual shoes of, that's a little it's hard to do. So. I'm not sure where else to go with this. I mean, really, it's just it's a lot altogether, and I really do appreciate. I'm pretty sure there's like a lot of other questions I'll think about later on, but but that's something we could talk on.
You're talking about Fort Logan, and we're actually just a couple of miles west of Fort Logan right now, where we're sitting.
Oh yeah.
And it's actually at.
It's in between where Danny went to, or where Tiffany and Eric went to middle school and high school, and Danny went to middle school just up the street. But 4 years in 2007, July 4th of 2007 is when they dedicated this memorial. They built this memorial, and I'm gonna turn it around and.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking into the sun. We're going to walk over that way, so okay. I'm probably shining you right into the sun right now.
Nope, you're fine. It's fine altogether. Yeah, I saw this online and I thought, wow. Wow.
Larger than life size, and they dedicated that July 4th of 2007. And then just about a year ago, I'll let Don walk all the way around.
Don, can you hold it right there at what it says? So I'm reading this. Yeah, it says Danny was awarded the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism while serving in a 4-man special reconnaissance team in Afghanistan in 2005. Petty Officer Dietz fought valiantly against a numerically superior enemy force, defending his team in a harrowing gunfight until he was mortally wounded. And then it says, I humbly served as a guardian to my fellow Americans, always ready to defend those who are unable to defend themselves. From the Navy SEAL Creed.
Yeah, that's just one sentence out of that. It's really worthwhile to look that up and Google the Navy SEAL Creed and read through it and actually see what these guys have to attest to while they're a SEAL and even afterwards. Can you read this?
Yeah, it says Danny grew up in Littleton, attended Centennial and Goddard schools, and graduated from Heritage High School in 1999. After surviving the toughest 44-week military training in the world, he fulfilled his dream of becoming a Navy SEAL. Navy Special Warfare, Sea, Air, Land. The scripture is based on one of the last photos taken of Danny. That is awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing this all together. I mean, this is amazing. This is
I want to show
nice.
I want to show you one last thing.
Okay.
This last year we dedicated this because Danny wasn't the only one on that mission, and we
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that his teammates were close by. And so a gentleman from the Veterans Funeral Care donated this, and it has all their names on it.
Can you see that, Craig?
I can, but can you zoom in? I'd like to read off those names there. There it is. So you've got Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy, SO2 Matthew Axelson, SO2 Danny Dietz, SOC Jacques Fontaine. Is it I can't read that. Fontaine, sorry.
Fontaine.
Jacques Fontaine,
Uh-huh.
Dan Healy, Eric Christensen, Jeffrey Lucas, Michael McGreevy, James Jeffrey Taylor, Shane Patton. Those were the Navy SEALs on the helicopter. Okay, these are from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Seamus O'Gore, Corey Goodnature, Kip A. Jacoby, Marcus Morellis, James Ponder, Stephen Reich, Michael Russell, and Chris Schirkenbach.
Stalkers.
And those were the Night Stalkers. And then they've got an eagle at the top. And the significance of the eagle is when Danny was being buried at Fort Logan, a single eagle was circling our services. And then when we dedicated this on July 4th of 2007, there was 3 eagles circling. And I'm part Apache Indian. And so I believe the eagle was Danny's spirit animal.
Wow. That is.
So we have an eagle here, and we also have an eagle at the top of his statue.
Like
behind us.
I can see it.
And then Danny's, and then of course Fort Logan is, what about
2 miles.
2 miles west of here.
Well, so one last question, Cindy.
Okay.
What is the one thing that you would want people to know as far as someone, let me back. What is the one thing you would want people to adhere to or understand as far as with Gold Star families and with, with Danny and his life? What is the things that really people should understand?
So I just, there's 3 different stars. There's the Gold Star, the Silver Star, and there's the Blue Star. Blue Star is a flag that you put on your door when you have a son or a daughter that's deployed. A Silver Star is if you have a loved one that's been injured. And then the Gold Star is where they've paid the ultimate sacrifice. As a Gold Star mother, there's no greater loss. I mean, I know teammates lose, such as yourself, you've lost good buddies, brothers, as you call them. And, but losing a child, and I'm not taking anything away from a spouse either, a spouse can find love again. A sibling and a parent, they can't find that again. You can't replace that child. You can't replace that brother or sister. And it's not that you're replacing them, because a spouse doesn't replace them, but they do find love again, and they can have a family, and and they can start over again. We can never start over again. We have to learn to carry on in our new norm of life. And that's just my thoughts. That's my feelings. Everybody has their own thoughts on a Gold Star family member. Those are mine.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this to both of you guys, Dawn and Cindy. Thank you so much for this opportunity altogether. You know, I just definitely want to say that altogether. So what I'm going to do is I'll end it here as far as what the recording is concerned, and go from there.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I hope to meet you soon because I'd like to give you something in person. So we're going to have to make that happen.
Okay. All right. Yeah, sounds awesome. I'm going to stop the recording here.